Stormbroken, or breaking the mold. Breaking news: Thor got a new axe. Really, Stormbreaker is a combination of the two. And that is not breaking news. What is amazing, however, is not the axe material itself, though, let's face it, that is quite amazing. It's the fact that it was cast and, without any finishing, was ready for battle. Another thing is that it was cast, not forged. So there should be more than one, even if it is a prototype or a positive mold. But back to the lack of need for finishing. It may help to know a bit more about how things are forged, or in this case, cast. I am D.L. Morris, and this is the Polyverse. But before we begin, you can subscribe and ring the bell for notifications when we post more great content. The uses of metal to make weapons is older than the Bronze Age itself, where the foundations of metalworking techniques were hammered out. Forging weapons and tools is the act of using heat to soften the metal enough to smash it into a new shape, and in many cases, fuse many pieces together. In the case of putting multiple pieces together, there is a technique called sanmai, a form of what is now called modern Damascus forging, which uses folding and layering to make some of the strongest swords, including the legendary katanas, in existence. If it's done right, it is a marvel. However, if it's done wrong, you could have cold shunts, delaminations, and general weak points throughout. Though there is this modern Damascus, there are legendary blades from history made out of another form of Damascus steel, which was reputed to be nigh on unbreakable. The specifics of that technique have been lost through history, but could present an interesting story for another day. Forging takes time, and it's certainly not cinematic, at least not as much as the casting of Stormbreaker. And it's not just the time and the heat to make a good blade. There is the heat treating, the tempering, the quenching, the handle making, and finally the finishing. The act of forging can cause stress points. A means of mitigating these problems is tempering and or heat treating. Basically repeated heating and cooling to even out the strength of the metal. Quenching is simply heating up the metal to a specified temperature depending on the metal, and then putting in either water or, more preferably nowadays, oil for the purpose of hardening. This hardening of the steel makes it a weapon and not just a hunk of metal. It's a very important step in the process of forging. Talking about the handle, that is almost as important as the metal itself. If you can't hold it, you can't swing it. And if you can't swing it, is it any more of a weapon than a rock? Then, to truly make it a force to be reckoned with, one has to finish it, and this includes sharpening and profiling. The edge has to be the correct angle in order to be useful and hold that edge long enough to do the job. Another metalworking technique is called casting, and this, like in the movie, involves actually melting the metal and then pouring it into a mold. This is usually used for some cheaper type blades and thicker types of non-edged weapons, like big hammers and in this case Stormbreaker. These types of thick weapons are more often used for smashing and bashing, like something for the Hulk, than for cutting. A problem with this technique is the potential for air cavities or pockets, which would weaken the whole weapon. The better the mold in this case, the less finishing work it would need to make it a fully functioning weapon. But whenever there is an edge, or it needs to be pretty or have some kind of mirrored finish for whatever reason, there is a definite need for grinding and polishing. When Dinklage's character smashes the mold to reveal the weapon, not a good idea so soon after casting. The metal would have to re-solidify, and that takes time, especially at the amount of heat we're dealing with. That heat, that energy, doesn't just disappear, but that's a different story. We see that Stormbreaker is actually in two pieces, and Groot uses his arm to make a handle and bring the pieces together. If you are already casting that much, it may make more sense to have the whole unit integral, including the handle, that could be wrapped in hide or something else, making a far stronger weapon with fewer potential weak points. But that is pedantic. Even cast weapons need some finishing work to make them look good, or get rid of burrs and such that may hurt the wielder or cause other problems down the line. And when one casts anything, there has to be a positive mold to make the negative mold that forms the cast. That means a potential for copies or extras. Another thing about Dinklage's foundry, not forge in this case, is that no technology can develop in isolation. The fact that there was even a rumor that Stormbreaker could summon the legendary Bifrost, amongst other things, means that there would have to be at least a prototype. The thing that acted as a positive mold, perhaps? That means there could, and by all rights should be, more than one of this class of weapon. Speaking of copies and prototypes, all of this hype about how Odin couldn't have had a copy or whatever of the Infinity Gauntlet before the events in Infinity War is just plain fallacy. First, we have no idea when Thanos ordered his gauntlet. It could have been decades in the past. After all, Thor had not been to the foundry in ages. There's also the deal with pre-Thor Odin. We know from Ragnarok that at one point Odin was hell-bent on conquering more than just 9 realms, and the stones would have at least been a rumor at that time. During that dark age, when we know he might have been fighting the Dark Elves, he would have known about the ether and could have ordered a gauntlet that might have been able to use the ether and or the Tesseract, or both at the same time. Perhaps at the time the dwarfs couldn't have made a gauntlet that could control all the Infinity Stones, but that would have been beside the point. It's about showing that you have the power other people don't. Hela would have known about this, and perhaps she made sure it was not capable. She could have stolen the real gauntlet and put in a fake just in case. And that was how she would know that it was a copy or a forgery. Then, when Thanos ordered one that could unite all the stones, the dwarfs would have had the prototypes to draw from. That is how prototypes work. I really hope you enjoyed this presentation. If you did, you can like, comment, and subscribe, and have a look at the archives. In any event, have a great day.